here after nd4, rook d4, rook f5, king g7, and then we play fg5, and then he plays bishop bc5. I saw here rook c5, because if we play like rook e8, then just rook d1 mate.
Yep, that's not good.
Yeah, exactly. So rook takes d5, b takes c5. No, rook takes e5. He has to play rook takes e1, just to not lose his rook, and then bishop takes e1. B takes c5, bishop c3, king f7, bishop takes d4, c takes d4.
My only question is, are you sure that endgame is a win? I mean, we have calculated like probably 8 moves now, and then we are in a king and pawn game. I just want to make sure that king and pawn game is a win. If I know why it's a win, then we are ready to play. But the only question is, are you sure it's a win? By the way, my king would probably be better on g6, not on f7, yeah?
Yeah.
When you play bishop c3, king g6 attacking your pawn on g5, yeah?
Yeah, and like it's probably gonna be a win because we can like create a path. Like if the king like moves away, then we can play h4, h5. So we have like the kind of like an outside potential pass pawn.
Yeah, you will get an outside potential pass pawn. But my king is far advanced. The only thing I want to know is my king is really advanced. That's the only question I have, actually. Other than that, that position seems quite straightforward. Can my king do anything? That's the only question I would have. Based on the pawn structure you have, you can have a simple answer for that. So I'm actually going to make the moves now. So I think we have talked about this quite a bit. Let's just finish this off. Oh, sorry. King g7 takes and bishop c5. Rook takes e5, rook takes e1, bishop takes e1, pawn takes and bishop here, yeah? So, yeah. So, can my king get in? Simple question.
Well, king g6, right? And then we take, and then h4.
Yeah, and then maybe I get in something. I don't know. Can I do that?
Like, you, I don't think so. Well, we have a good, decent pawn structure, right? So if you like try to get in, like you're probably gonna like, we can like create a pass pawn basically. Like if you
Fair enough. Yeah.
It's not gonna do much. So
these are kind of protected pass pawns, almost like, right? Like having two pawns together, the king will never be able to capture them, right? So yeah, that's good, Awan. Thank you. So the main thing is, in that calculation, we have to just visualize this end game and decide if it's winning or not winning. And it's actually quite easy. It's not a very difficult puzzle to say that you will play h4 and then you will play g3. And then that's it. I cannot touch these pawns. And then you bring your king over and then you play b4. At some point, you just play b4 because after c5, I would have this structure and white plays b4 and black has to lose the pawns and eventually lose the game, right? So the main thing to just remember is this pawn structure is a self-sustaining pawn structure which cannot be attacked. Not very difficult. But I thought this was neat from where it started. By the way, if there is no bishop c5, I actually just go back. And I just move I don't know, I can play h4 and then bring the king in. And this will be a deadly pin forever. And white again is completely winning, right? Everything is simplified. Once you allow me to go back, I think it's totally game over. So this looks like the most important move, and it's a complete conversion. So this is very easy when we look at it after the game is done, but this is the part of technique, right? You know a king and pawn game that's winning, you steer the game to that, right? Okay, that's good. We started with a nice... by the way, this was a world championship match, so it's also the decisions are probably very important. Bishop e5. I don't know if this should work. Let's see. Bishop e5 check. Let's think about this a little bit. First question is, if I take, you're going to take with this rook. And whatever check I play, you move the king to h1, I guess. The bishop is definitely pinned. I don't know, actually. Yeah, what if I just go back? AP says he found everything except bishop c3 at the end. Turns out to be a winning move, right? So if I go back, looks like this is probably okay. I feel like, you know, you're stuck in a pin for no reason now. So you'll have to move your king, and okay, maybe you're still better. I don't know. Actually, maybe not after this. Bishop d4. Okay, let me try to see. I'm looking at as many chats as possible so we can have questions and answers according to that. But pardon me if I'm not able to get to everything. King g6 is also possible. I was just thinking I'll go to a place where there's no check. Bishop d4 h3. Daniel. Yeah, white's still better actually. Okay, I guess we will move on from here. I think there are multiple things again. I mean, plenty of winning options, but I was just interested in showing you this final endgame, yeah? Recognizing this endgame in a sequence and then just saying that, yes, white's winning because of this pawn structure and then going into that. Then you have a technically winning position quickly. All right, let's move on to the next one. The next one is actually quite an interesting endgame. And let's pull it up. Okay. All right.
Yeah, sorry guys, we just got back here with the class. My computer's been struggling, but this is GM Magesh teaching the US Chess School.
Okay.
Giving a class on Steinitz.
This is the next one we're going to see. Steinitz is playing white, and kind of an interesting position already, because let's talk about what the position is, like we did last time, yeah? I don't know what the discussion is in chat, so I'm going to ignore that. So let's see if someone wants to tell me what's going on in this position. What do you think? Again, we can talk as well. If you want to say something, you can put an exclamation point. I can call on you. Okay. Aryan wants to say something. Let's hear it, Aryan.
So basically, there are a bunch of holes on the dark squares which white can use, but at the same time there are a bunch of holes on the light squares which black can use.
So light squares, you mean these are good for black, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Oh, I don't think he can actually use them effectively. Wait, whose turn is it?
it's white to play. I mean, if it's black's turn to play, we don't have to calculate much, I guess.
Yeah, you can just maybe just take the queen and then take the knight, and then you just get a better endgame without much counterplay.
So you'll have a better endgame without much of a counterplay, yeah? Okay, fair enough. I think the main point is this is like super advanced pawns for black, yeah? So I guess Kostya is asking us to stay on topic. I guess, yeah, we can also make the chat just to host, so they can only chat to me for now, and then maybe open it in the end if you guys want to. So, okay, thank you, Aryan. So the point is, black has super advanced pawns and a lot of space, but the problem is the bishop is kind of bad. Yeah, it's a terrible bishop because the pawns are doing the same thing that the bishop is doing. So definitely dark squares are weak. And okay, here's an opportunity. You could trade queens, and you can also trade the knight. So you will end up with a good knight versus bad bishop kind of position. But the question is, can you convert that, right? So let's kind of play the first move. Steinitz did play queen takes e7, rook takes e7. And yeah, the white bishop is bad, Austin, you're right. So he decided to actually take. Now, black actually has three options. I'm kind of curious to see what you will play as black. So if you are playing black here, which option would you choose? Okay, Julian has picked something.
I feel like you gotta go D. You gotta open up that bishop. FE, just knight f4, super ugly.
Again, think a little bit about what you will need to do to defend your position.
Rook e4 possible, but...
And white does seem to have a stronghold. If I put my knight on c3, my pawns on the queen side are strong. I have that outside pass pawn. I have control of all dark squares. The only advantage you technically have is your really advanced pawn on h3. So black's perspective has to be purely defending perspective.
Yeah.
Aryan says it's very obvious. Actually, it was not so obvious to me, Aryan. I was looking at this position and it was not so obvious.
Not so obvious.
think about it. Think about it and make a decision, all of you. It's just a choice. I mean, it's nothing to win or lose. So all of you give me a move. Which one it is? Is it FE4, DE4, or Rook E4? Just one move you have to pick.
It might be Rook E4. What I don't like about Rook E4 is that it doesn't guarantee that white will trade, of course. White will just leave their rook on D4 and just play a move like Rook FD1. So to me, getting D takes E4 feels important. But Magesh says it's not so obvious. I don't know. I don't know. Like DE4, white will go Rook FD1 anyway. Then black will need to find a move there. Like you could trade rooks. Knight takes D4.
Okay. I am getting a lot of different ones. I'm getting FE4, DE4, and Rook E4. I like that. We have a good mix here. All right, I'll give you maybe another 15 seconds to choose. Keep making these decisions, then you can reflect on them. When we talk about the position, what is right or wrong, then you can go back to think about what decision you made and how to improve on that.
Well, I don't know if FE4 is like terrible, but I don't like it because it doesn't allow us to open up the bishop on F7. So the bishop on F7 just stays super passive.
I like some of the very interesting reasoning too.
So I'd be really surprised if FE4
Okay.
was the move.
Time is up. So dominate the C3 knight. Austin, you want to say something about your choice? Let's go.
Okay, so I'm actually kind of stuck between DE4 and Rook E4, so I have reasoning for both. So first of all, if you take with the rook, then white can't play knight C3 because then you'll take the rook on D4, and then white won't be able to attack the pawn on D5 with the rook anymore. And then if you retreat the rook,
quick pause there. I mean, I understand the point that I cannot attack D5, but I don't know if it's a completely say, I won't do that kind of variation yet, because if I have my knight on C3 and pawn on D4, I still don't see you getting in through the file. And this pawn might be a good lock for this one. And I might have a this way. So, I mean, like, just saying, I wouldn't rule it out yet, but I do see a point. Yeah? All right, keep going, Austin.
But the main point is if white retreats the rook and tries to put the knight there, then we have D4 and then bishop D5. And the bishop just kind of frees itself. But that's only if white retreats the rook. So that's why I'm kind of, the more I look at it, the more I'm leaning towards D takes E4. Because initially I was kind of concerned about rook D1, trying to take control of the D file. But then I realized that this D file, it's not actually that important. Like we can just take the rook on D4, and then after white takes it back with his rook, then you play rook C7. And the point is that white rook, it can't really attack any of the black pawns because they're all like protecting each other, or they're protected by the bishop. And there is sometimes, I guess white will try to put the knight on C3, but then when you can play king F6, king E5, and then you can kind of control the knight. So things seem to be kind of okay for black.
Okay, so basically, I think you're coming to D takes E4, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, by the way, it turns out black can survive in multiple ways here. I don't know about rook E4 though. I think you can survive both with DE4 and FE4 based on what I have checked on this game. So both have good reasoning, I think. The one thing I didn't hear for F takes E4 here, I mean, I heard for D takes E4, that makes sense. You got rid of your backward pawn, you're opening the file for your rook, and this is still a pass pawn, so why not, yeah? So that's reasonable. This has one small advantage, which is what? Can anyone tell me one tiny advantage for black to do this?
Just get the F file?
F2 pawn, yeah? You have a nice open file to create some counterplay, and then you also eliminated that pawn as a weakness. So think about this. This knight has 3 awesome squares, yeah? You have to think about this. And my knight will be attacking your pawns from these squares. If I'm on D4, I can actually make that a weakness, right? This is anyways a weakness all along. And this is not, right? So right now there are 2 weaknesses right here. And by taking this, black might eliminate it into only one weakness, because this pawn is almost impossible for white to attack. So when I do pawn takes F takes E4, it suddenly becomes very clear that G4 is impossible to attack. So there is only one weakness. So that's another way to do that, right? So in the game, F takes E4 was played. Wow. So now, let's see. Like I said, black can hold this, but it's very, very dangerous, very, very tricky. And it's not easy at all. let's come up with some ideas. So basically, I think the first step is very straightforward. Yeah, you put your knight on c3, maybe you put your rook on d1 and d2. So your knight and the two rooks will all be attacking d5. So that's kind of obvious. And you will be threatening all sorts of moves like knight d5 and knight e4. So, okay. Evan, do you want? I see you're chatting something. Do you want to say something? Can I hear your idea and why can't the king move? Okay, let's unmute. No? Okay, I didn't see that. Okay, Aryan wants to still say something. Let's go with Aryan.
I think f takes c4 was just unnecessary because the counterplay on the f2 pawn I think is pretty irrelevant because just king g1 and you defend it. Even if black doubles up, just king g1 and defend it. And on the other side, white can crash in. Possibly, or just hit in the center.
Let's discuss how white's going to crash in. That's the point we are. I want to hear how white is going to make progress now.
So probably knight to c3, then rook to b1 and then b2, and then king to g1, and possibilities of b6 are in the air.
Yep, I think b6 and a6, a6, b6 or b6, they're all possible.
Yeah.
And you can also put the knight on c3, d4 and d2. But it's not super obvious to me how I'm winning yet, because even if you play b6 and I take, how are you winning there? I mean, like I have two rooks blocking b7, and I don't see how. First, let's actually talk about black's defense, guys. Let's talk about where will black. I mean, I have to defend this pawn. So can someone tell me how I'm defending this pawn as black? Let's start with that. This is exactly the kind of position where you should think ideas, not moves. You don't need to think about, oh, where do I go? Where do I get? You have to think about the position you want to reach. Where would your pieces be? Where would you reach? Right? So, king, yeah? Everyone's saying king. Of course, I play king f6, king e5. Makes a lot of sense. Now, let's say this knight's on c3 and this rook goes to d2. Yeah? And I think those are the first few initial moves. Maybe I can just play them quite fast. So, after pawn takes, knight c3 was played. Bishop e6 was played. Rook f d1. And I guess king f6 was played, and after king g1, king e5. Okay, let's play up to this point. Yeah, this seems reasonable. So now you cannot take this or you cannot take this. I think both are very well defended. What next? Who wants to tell me or think about a winning plan for white?
Well, that's so easy. I don't know. I bring the knight to f4. You know, knight e2, knight f4. Let's go.
I would like to talk to someone who's not yet discussed, so that way I can have more people talk about your ideas. White is not winning yet. I mean,
not sure.
Yeah, I kind of gave you that already. Black can defend, of course, but not easy. I mean, I just think white has a very nice plan to move forward, and I want to see who can find that.
Oh, maybe we can go rook d2 and then just like shuffle the king, just walk the king all the way over like
so this is a point where you don't really need to tell me moves. You could actually tell me ideas. You don't have to tell me exactly where you're doing what. If you look at the position, black actually has nothing. Black has to wait. Absolutely no progress. So you can do whatever you want with your pieces. Oh, Evan, you want to explain your move now? I see an exclamation point. Go on, Evan.
Nice.
I thought b6.
Okay.
Well, if they take, and take, well, it's just sort of makes the rook overworked a bit, and also it opens a spot for the knight on possibly b5. And,
Knight going to b5, okay.
Yeah.
So
Fair enough. I think b6 is definitely one of the ways to move forward, yeah. There is still a lot more though, because I'm definitely guarding b7. Even if you go knight b5, I still don't see exactly what the next threat is, right? And yeah, I mean it's there, but not so clear to me. I think, Kostya, your suggestion makes sense. Of course, that's the first way to improve.
Message them. I would try to bring the king to b4.
Austin says, why does everyone forget about the king? Okay, so I have a plan of king going to b4 and c5. Okay, I can get to b4. I don't know if I can actually get to c5 because a check will just push you right back. So let's stop at b4. I like your king improvement plan, but I'm going to hold it off at b4. Let's see. I still kind of want to play king to b4. Okay, Julian, that's right. We got the king to b4. Next, what next?
Then maybe knight a4, knight c5.
How are you going to win this one? So in the meantime, let's say attack your pawn or something, you would probably put your rook on d2.
Right.
White has a very strong plan. Let's see who can find that plan. There are probably two ways to proceed there, as you all know, hopefully by now. b6 is definitely one of them. But let's say your king is on b4 and I put my rook on like b7, I don't know. Actually, I cannot do that. This is hanging. Sorry, my bad. So I'll have to just still wait. So if you put your king on b4 and you push pawn to b6, might have to just take, yeah? I might have to take, and play something like rook d6. That looks pretty good. Why not?
So they're analyzing king b4.
Aryan wants to play a6. Okay.
a6.
And knight a4, knight c5 is being suggested. So by the way, I think b6, we are really looking at this real problem. Pawn takes, and then I go rook d6. And then I go rook probably here, yeah? And if you play king c5, maybe, I don't know if I should start with this rook over here. Yeah. If I play this rook over here, your rook has to go to b2. And then maybe this rook goes to d8. Again, if you can visualize the board, the white king goes to b4. And then when you play b6, that's the position I'm trying to deal with. And I'm looking at takes and some rook d6, rook b7 ideas, and then eventually rook d8. I feel like I'm still blocking you. But you've made a lot of progress. No questions about that. But still quite unclear. Still quite unclear. Okay. Let's see. Knight a4 and knight c5 definitely looks very interesting to me. But there was one move that I feel like is kind of very straightforward. I mean, I want the pass pawns, right? My pass pawns have to really make the difference.
Oh, b6 takes a6? Really?
Knight a4 is winning with the idea of knight c5, says Julian. So let's see, the king on b4. And okay, why don't we get to that point? I think this is kind of easy to play that. So I'm going to play the moves. And let's get to that point. I know it's a bunch of moves. I'm going to just play from the game itself. So rook here was played, king e1 was played, rook h7. So black was just waiting.
Wow, b6
and actually, Steinitz went for a6 very early here. So I don't know. Maybe we can, keep that option open and then play a6. So the point I was going to ask is also that the a6 idea is very strong, because if you get your king to a5 and then play this, that looks like the a pawn probably will be much, much stronger than your b pawn that you were trying to push. Yeah, you still have your knight a4, knight c5 ideas. All these things are exactly there. And yes, b6 are also possible. Takes and a6 is also the same idea, but you could actually force b6 after that also. Yeah.
Very cool.
Didn't want to risk any pawn moves, says Julian. That's actually true. I would also not have played a6 at this point, because if I had this position, I think there's no reason to commit a6 yet. You could always do your rook d2 and bring your king all the way in and then do it, because I don't see black really playing this move. This might be very, very bad. So black a6 is not really much. Okay, but let's see the game, because I think most of you pretty much agree that a6 and b6 is also a winning try, right? Yeah. The best technical should have known the best technical players don't rush. Yes. Well, actually, that's not 100% true. If you're a good technical player, basically you convert to known theoretical endgames. So that's what is a good technique. Somebody who has good technique usually is the one that's not playing. It doesn't even have to be precise moves. Taking to the most known theoretical endgames is how you win slightly better positions. Oh, Tori, that's okay, no problem. You can look up this game. I would still say you have to look it up. There's a very instructive defense on this. That's what I'm going to talk about next. So let's actually play a6, guys. I want to go with the game. So a6 was played, rook hf7, rook 1 d2, rook h7. I'm just playing just the game moves, king d1, rook hf7. I think there might be maybe a repetition here. King c2, rook f3, king d1, rook f7. Yeah, king c1 now, rook h7, king b2, rook hf7, and king a3, rook h7, king b4, rook e7. So basically, we've gotten up to this point. Now I want you all to think about what black can actually do here, because white played king a5. So now I will give you a couple of minutes, all of you. Again, don't rush into your answer. Now I want you to think from black's perspective, because again, even though it's a very instructive endgame from white, we still want to know what the objective position is, right? Can black defend this? How can you defend this if you can do this?
Oof, I hate these positions. How does black defend? Terrible position.
Now I would say take your time. No, don't rush into it. But I need precise moves now. I think white has come to a point where now the general ideas have stopped. I could play b6. I could play rook b2 followed by b6. You really need to know what the next move is.
Yeah. So rook d6. Got to be very careful. Knight takes e4. Wins for white. So
okay,
no
rook d6 doesn't work. Yeah, you're falling into some kind of a trap.
Right.
What happens after rook d6? Knight d4, yeah? So we just instantly lose.
Same with rook d8.
Actually, I'm going to go one move before, guys. I might have just made one move too much. Let's start from here, I think, yeah? So this is move 55. Yeah, actually, no, we are in the right place. Sorry. So yeah, king a5 is pretty much unstoppable. That is true. But I was just trying to say whether I can play king a5 or rook b2, that is not that black can stop it. It's just that black can try to create a setup that will work for defense.
Maybe we pull the bishop back, bishop f7. So then on b6 takes rook e6 check.
Julian's pointing out the only winning variation after knight e4. That's true. So rook d6, knight e4, pawn takes e4, rook takes d6, and c3 is very strong, yeah? Yeah, but rook takes e6, you're right, is winning. Rook takes e6 followed by rook c2 and king b4, and I pick up this pawn. So, in fact, rook c2 directly makes more sense, because the king will come to b4 and catch the pawn. Bishop f7, okay. So I'm going to play rook b2 next. And then I'm going to play b6. By the way, I don't think I can play b6 now, yeah? If I play b6, you will take, king takes, and you will play something like this check.
Oh, rook d6 check anyway. So
and then this rook will go in there, and then some, yeah, and then I think at that point I might not mind losing this pawn. So white's real threat is rook b2. So bishop f7 still, oh, bishop f7 also runs into knight e4. That's right, yeah. I think Austin has pointed that out. Okay, so defense is quite tricky here. I think playing for white here is so much easier than playing for black.
Yeah, you can't move anything, man. This knight takes c4 is just hanging over our heads. It's like no moves for black, man. Just resigns. Okay, rook e8, rook e8, rook b8, maybe. No, rook e8 again, knight takes c4.
What is it that you're going to do? I'm going to play rook b2 and b6 again.
Maybe
if you think about it, the defensive
f7.
pieces, where can you keep them and what can you do? That's basically what this position is. If you can find the precise defensive point where you do the best with your pieces, I know your pieces are all inactive, but if you find the best combination, then you will be able to hang in there.
Maybe rook f7 first, and then on rook b2.
So I'm seeing rook
d6.
f7 followed by rook d6. So that is definitely an interesting option.
I don't know about.
And if I play b6 after that, so rook f7, rook here, you play rook here, and I play this. Basically, takes takes, and then you do get to take on f2. But that looks still kind of interesting, yeah? Because if I play a7, your rook is not catching the pawn. Yeah? Yeah, I don't see how you're catching the pawn. The only move I would see is this.
Your pawn
And
really
then
strong.
it should be lost at that point, yeah? Rook c7 and rook d7. Okay, let's try Aradhya. Let's try rook c7. Okay, I'm going to go rook b2. You play rook d7, I'm going to play b6. I think I basically got what I wanted, yeah? Because if you play rook c5 check, I can always block. And basically, that's the whole idea of a6. I think the a pawn is becoming extremely strong. How are you going to deal with this? Turns out this is still a draw. Very precise play, it's still a draw. Okay, rook c7 blunders knight d5, that's right. I'm really thinking too much here. Missing tactical moves. Thank you for talking about all these things. I mean, in general, I was talking about maybe, actually, yeah, you cannot even achieve that position, yeah? You cannot achieve that with rook d6 or with rook c7. Either move, you lose a pawn.
It was really, I don't know if there's a solution here for black. I mean,
So rook f7 and rook c7 threatening rook c5. Okay, that's interesting. You play rook f7, I play rook here, you play c7. I am not worried about rook c5 because I have rook b5. So it doesn't look like I'm, this still looks very strong to me. Because the point is now at some point I can play knight b5 and a7. Of course, I won't let you sacrifice an exchange because then you will get too much counterplay. But at the right time. And also now this rook will come down. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I have to play this move first. Because if I play b6, oh yeah, actually b6 works because pawn takes b6, king takes b6. I'm still keeping an eye on this and there is no check here. And then rook c7, rook here. Again, I'm just in time to create this strong threat. Even if I lose this pawn, I think the a pawn is too strong. Okay, so the defense is not super easy, so I'm going to go over it, at least to some part of it. So rook f7 makes a lot of sense. After b6, a6, king b6, can you play knight takes e4? Trade everything and play a7. That's right, yeah. All these things will work.
B6 takes,
Julian, I don't think I
B8.
listened to your line. Can you actually speak? Because I might not have paid attention to the one that you typed.
Yeah, so I was thinking that probably I want to play rook f7 precisely after you play rook b2. Because,
okay, so you play
so
something like rook g7 here, maybe?
Right, rook b2, then rook f7 back.
Okay, and I do that?
And if you play b6, then I take and go rook f2.
Sorry.
You're taking with the king here. And here I was hoping to play like rook d6 and rook d7 back.
But now rook d6, I go here.
And rook d7 back.
Yeah, so now the problem is I already achieved this, yeah? So now, for example, let's say I do this. And I get to move my rook.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm making slow progress, and this is really very dangerous.
Wait, rook d2, d4? Oh, there's rook b5.
Wait, someone's saying the pawn is falling. How is the pawn falling? If you play rook here, I will play rook b6. There is no pawn falling. Because if you move the bishop, d5 is falling.
Get wrecked.
b5.
Because this is the only move that can actually attack the pawn, and that drops this. So I'm not so sure what Austin is talking about. So, I mean, okay. So
I think rook
the
f8.
only way you can fight back is if you instantly win the pawn. Actually, that's right. Yeah, because if you allow this, it looks like it's going to be slow, but I will make more progress. Yeah. So, I mean, rook f7 first move is correct. Oops, sorry. Rook f7 the first move is correct, and after rook b2.
I think rook f8 here.
Now I think again very precise moves required. The clue I gave you is that you want to put your pieces in the best possible defense, right? So basically every piece in the most optimized defensive position. This rook has moved out of here, which means knight e4 is not a threat. Rook f8 is being suggested, bishop f5 is being suggested. Okay, bishop f5 looks bad because I will play this. Rook f8, fair enough. I think rook f8 does stop the plan of b6 because b6 now I cannot play because you will take. If I take with the king, you have rook check. And if I take with the rook, now this is very strong. Taking on f2 with this rook still out here is okay. So rook f8 might actually work. But the most precise one I was looking at was rook f6. Rook f8 also might work, as long as you stop b6. So if you play b6 again, now takes, and king takes, and I go bishop f7. And then this pawn actually falls. So I go here and I play bishop e8, and that pawn will just fall with some kind of check. Very difficult to defend that pawn now, right? And again, look at the beautiful spot. That's what I was talking about.
Nice.
Where I'm doing everything exactly at the right time. If I don't do this, I'm losing. So Austin is asking why not rook 4 d2. Fair enough. So this is the next move. So now again, you have to clearly see what the defense is. Little tricky. You have to go bishop f7.
Oh,
And if I play b6, what can you do?
This is where you go. Oh, rook d6? No.
What
really?
can black do?
Wow, rook d6, guys.
Yep, rook d6. Very strong. Very interesting defense. So
Wow.
somehow black is just in time to deal with all the problems. And I cannot play b7 because of takes. And the only real defense is this. And Julian, you're asking about some d4. I'll come to that after this. And then now, if I play knight a4, what do we do? Still one more precise move is required, because I could play this one now.
c3? c3, b7?
If you play pawn takes, I will take with the rook first. I won't take with knight.
Yeah, c3. 'Cause
Austin.
then b7 we can take on a6.
Bishop
though.
e8, says Royal. Perfect. Bishop e8.
Oh,
Yeah.
bishop e8, wow.
I mean, like, this is super precise defense. You miss one move here in this winning plan, black is completely lost, right? The timing is fantastic here, and you're threatening bishop takes a4 to win the pawn, and push will run into the same thing. And now, actually, wait, can I take and go? Maybe I'm trying to see how do I stop you from queening in this particular case. After rook takes king here, rook check king here, right? Am I missing something here? Is the pawn still queening? Bishop a4, I queen with check. So that's one of the issues, yeah? Rook b6, knight takes b6, rook takes b6, king here, and I cannot get the pawn. Maybe we are missing
No, bishop takes a4 and then rook b6.
bishop
check.
a4 and then rook b6 check. No, bishop takes a4, I'm queening with a check.
Oh!
So that's really the problem, yeah? So I
yeah,
cannot
rook
play
b6.
bishop takes a4 directly. I can play rook takes a4. But king here. Who is he playing with this in this game? He's playing with, I don't remember the exact name of the player. Let's see. Moritz. Poga Moritz is the name of the player. So let's check this very quickly. Bishop e8. I'm not going to analyze too much here. I'm going to ask our friend Stockfish very quickly.
Rook b3.
B7. What am I missing? We're missing rook b3. Rook b3. So simple stuff sometimes is just really fun. Yeah, rook b3 in the end is right. Nastya, you figured it out. I had to use the engine. So check and rook b3, guys. Yeah. I mean, somehow I just want to sacrifice rook for a pawn. I've already picked up too many pawns. So this is, Austin did. Fantastic, Austin. Good job. So now rook b6 happens next, right? Even here, the defense is very tricky, right? Even after this bishop e8. So what actually got me curious here was I started thinking, if this is the case, right? Is this position a zugzwang, yeah? So for example, in this position, if the rook has to move, if the rook goes here, then I can play this move, right? Because if the rook goes up and down, we always have knight e4 threat, right? So what if I get a position like this, right? If I can create a zugzwang,
that'd be so sick.
can I actually win this one? Right, that was the first question that came to my mind. But it turns out now, I think one of the variations that Julian suggested early on, Aryan is saying, do I use Stockfish? I mean, I don't use the engine a lot, but depending on situation and what we are doing. For example, if it's a calculation exercise that we are working on, I would say yes, we should just sit there and try to figure it out, and that would be the best thing. There are two types of things that you work on in a game, right? Sometimes you're trying to evaluate a position. A lot of your opening study will be like that. You want to know what's the best in the position, and when you're doing that, you can use an engine. That's completely fine. But there are a lot of times you're just basically trying to improve the way you think. Then using the engine is pretty useless, right? So that's the time you really should just think. But if you're studying an opening, you want to figure out if that position is good or bad, and then there are some positions you're analyzing some things. Using the engine makes a lot more sense. Still want to play a6 and then play knight c5. Yeah, I mean, there are other variations here too that we can still do that. But actually, I figured out that the rook f8 is still okay here. And now knight e4, the same idea we talked about early on actually works for black now. So this is the key defense again. And I think white has to kind of struggle to make a draw here. It's not easy because there is a problem. I use stock fishing, but not using an engine a lot. Yeah, that's a good idea. In fact, everyone in this class, I would suggest that using an engine is not going to help you improve as a player.
Hear that?
And I use it minimally. So for example, in today's example, I would say I kind of chickened out a little bit. The right thing to do is to actually sit there and figure out the move. And since we didn't have enough time, and we're getting towards the end, and I wanted to show this variation as well, so I went in. But it's a good idea. Keep that in mind. Do not depend on engines. That's not going to help you improve your game.
You hear that? You hear that, guys?
So coming back to this, so black has this defense, and of course, black did not figure it out. In fact, black gave this opportunity, and Steinitz missed it, if I remember right. I'll just show that part, and then maybe we can wrap it up there. So in the game, he actually went rook g7. So let's go back here. After rook h7, actually king a3, king b4, rook h7, king a5. So here, actually, black went rook g7. And after rook to b2, rook f7 was played. And now this move is just winning. But I think Steinitz played knight a4 here, which allowed black to fight back into the game, where he played rook c7 and king b4 and rook f8. So the game went on a little bit more, and eventually black decided to go rook c7 and rook a6, I think, with rook on b8. Still had a draw, but I'm not going to go too much in depth with that. I felt this was very instructive from this point here, right? I think this is a very instructive thing to think. So, I mean, even without a6, maybe there is more to explore here. I know some of you already suggested this b6 directly, or bring the king to b4 and then play some knight a4, knight c5 ideas, which is also pretty interesting. I don't think that's also very obvious. A lot more probably to be analyzed here. This is kind of analysis I would recommend you do on your own and not with the engine.
For sure.
And once you do your work later, you can definitely work with the engine. Yeah. Why we say OD now? I have no idea what OD is. I also don't know what OP is. Everyone keeps doing that in stream. I've seen that. It's overpowering or something? Oh, overpowered. Okay, thank you. I kind of guessed it, but I didn't know that. Okay, so this is a good place to wrap it up. Any questions? I would be happy to answer. And then we can wrap it up with that. Yeah, some people have been saying OD. I have no idea. There's only one OD I know.
Cool. Well, thanks, Magesh. That was a really interesting endgame.
All right, thanks.
Really
That's
appreciate it. Yeah, you guys can feel free to send in some questions if you like, but I'll be wrapping up the class soon. And yeah, thanks so much.